After studying this module, you shall be able to know the meaning of human resource planning, learn the benefits or advantages of human resource planning, identify how training and staff development fit with the human resource planning, and learn the meaning of succession planning. About the meaning of human resource planning. What is human resource planning? It could be defined as a strategy for acquisition, utilization, improvement, and preservation of the HR of an enterprise. HR planning is a forward looking function. It tries to assess human resource requirements in advance, keeping the production schedules, market fluctuations, demand forecasts, etc. in the background. So, in the light of this, human resource planning is a subject to revision of the course and the tuning of the requirements of the organization from time to time. It's an integral part of the overall corporate plan, and it reflects on the overall broad thinking of the management about the manpower needs within the organization. In other words, human resource planning is a process that identifies the current and future human resource needs for the organization to achieve its goals. Human resources and their planning should serve as a link between the human resource management and the overall strategic plan of an organization. Aging worker population in most of the Western countries and the growing demand for qualified workers in developing economies have underscored the importance of effective human resource planning. As defined by Bulla and Scott, human resource planning is the process of ensuring that human resource requirements of an organization are identified and plans are made for satisfying those requirements. Really defined workforce planning as a process in which an organization attempts to estimate the demand for labor and evaluate the size, nature and sources of supply which will be required to meet the demand. Human resource planning includes creating an employer brand, retention strategy, absence management strategy, flexibility strategy, talent management strategy, recruitment and selection strategy. Meaning, it is planning for the future personnel needs of an organization. Identification of the workforce requirements for the future include what quantity, what quality or skill requirements are there, what variety and what timing. Now, we shall proceed to focus on the steps in the manpower planning process. There are 4 steps in the manpower planning process: manpower forecasting, manpower inventory, audit, manpower gap and manpower plans. First of all, let us look at manpower forecast. It is a predetermining or anticipating the requirement of manpower in a qualitative as well as a quantitative manner at a future point of time. Manpower inventory is inventorizing the available people, the number of people in each type of personnel role that are currently available. Manpower gap is the difference between the forecasted requirement and the available human resources within each category, which will have to be recruited to fulfill the needs. Manpower plan, it is a plan to bridge the gap between the forecasted needs and the availability of human resources. For example, further recruitment plans, training plans, promotion plans, etc., to fulfill the vacancies in the future. Thus, manpower planning aims at anticipating the requirements of human resources at each level to prevent shortages and surpluses of human resources. Benefits and uses the objectives of human resource planning. Determining the number of to be employed, the number of personnel, the number of persons to be employed at a new location. This is one of the first objectives. If the organization overdoes the size of their workforce, it will carry surplus or underutilized staff. Alternately, if the opposite judgment is made, then the staff may be overstretched, making it hard or even impossible to meet the production targets or the service deadlines. In fact, the quality may also suffer. So the question that we must ask over here is, how can your output be improved through understanding the interrelationship between productivity, work organization and technology development? What does this mean for the staff numbers? What techniques can be used to establish workforce requirement? Have more flexible work arrangements been considered? How the staff you need is to be acquired? These principles can be applied to any exercise to define workforce requirement, whether it be a business startup or a relocation or the opening of a new factory or office. The second objective is retaining your highly skilled staff. Issues about retention may not have been to the fore in recent years, but all it needs for the organization to lose key staff is to realize that the understanding of the pattern of resignations is needed. Thus, an organization should have monitoring of the extent of resignation, discover the reasons for it, establish what it is costing to the organization, and compare loss rates with other similar organizations. That means there has to be some kind of benchmarking about what is going on in similar organizations in the rest of the industry. Without this understanding, the management may be unaware of how many good quality staff are being lost and at what rate they are being lost. This will cost the organization dearly and directly also through the bill for separation, recruitment and induction, but also through a loss from the long-term capability of the organization. Having understood the nature and extent of resignation, steps can be taken to rectify the situation. This may be relatively cheap and a simple solution once the reasons for the departure of the employees, the reasons for the attrition have been identified. But it will depend upon whether the problem is peculiar to your own organization or whether it is concentrated in particular groups. That is, does it depend upon the gender, the age, the particular skill category, the grade of the worker and so on. Managing an effective downsizing program or a right sizing program. That is, another objective is to arrive at the right size of an organization. This is an all too common issue for managers. how is the workforce to be cut painlessly, while at the same time, how can the organization protect the long-term interest of the organization? A question made by all the harder is made all the harder by the time pressures that management is under, both because of business necessities and the employees' anxieties. HR planning helps by considering the sort of workforce envisaged at the end of the exercise, the pros and cons of different routes to get there, the utility of retaining, redeployment and transfers, and finally what the appropriate recruitment levels might be. Such an analysis can be presented to senior managers so that the cost and benefits of various methods of reduction can be assessed, and from time to time this exercise should be done, and then some time should be taken off to meet the targets of the establishment. If instead the CEO announces on one day that there will be no compulsory redundancies and voluntary severance is open to all staff, the danger is that an unbalanced workforce will result. This would lead to all kinds of problems. It is often difficult and expensive to replace lost quality and experience. So, this whole process should not be a mechanical affair. To facilitate change, all of this human resource planning involves a lot of change. So, human resource planning facilitates change, that is, whenever there is a new technology or other changes, it may require people with some specialized knowledge and skills. As a result, effective human resource planning can help in having such people in advance in order to cope with the changes and to facilitate change. Where the next generation of managers would come. This is a big challenge. Many senior managers are troubled by this issue. They have seen traditional career paths disappear. They have had to bring senior staff from elsewhere, that is through lateral entry as it is called. But they recognize that while this may have dealt with the short-term skills shortage, it does not solve the longer-term question of managerial supply, that is, what sort of managers are required, how many are required, and from where would they come. So, to address these questions, you need to understand a few more aspects. The present career system, including patterns of promotion and movement, of recruitment and wastage, the characteristics of those who are currently occupying senior positions, and the organization's future supply of talent. This can then be compared with the future requirements in terms of number and type. This will of course be affected by the internal structural change and the external business or political change. Compare your current supply to this revised demand. This will show whether there is a surplus or there are shortages, and accordingly you could take corrective action. What could this corrective action be? Recruiting to meet the shortages of those with senior management potential, allowing faster promotions to fill the immediate gap, developing cross-functional contracts for high flyers, hiring on fixed term contracts to meet the short term skill requirement or experience deficit. Reducing staff numbers to remove blockages or forthcoming surpluses, because it is equally important to manage both, that is deficits as well as surpluses. Thus, appropriate recruitment, deployment and severance policies can be pursued to meet the business needs. Otherwise, processes are likely to be haphazard, inconsistent and ad hoc. The wrong sort of staff if the wrong sort of staff is engaged at the wrong time, then there would be a wrong contract and it would prove to be both expensive and embarrassing to set right such a matter at a later date. Succession planning. Succession planning is a process by which the companies and businesses ensure that there is an orderly and planned transfer of power, responsibilities and job functions when the employees, usually in the higher positions, in the executive positions and the top management, leave the company either through retirement or through other means. Now, if we think of human resource planning as ensuring that the right people, the right skills are available, so the company can meet its strategic and short-term goals, then it is clear that succession planning is an important part of this process. In terms of process, succession planning involves identifying positions and roles where vacancies are anticipated and identifying how the company will fill those positions. When it is determined that succession planning will rely on internal promotions, some companies begin a process to identify one or more potential candidate, and being in the process of development with them, they do so that when the time is ripe for a person to be stepped up, they have those who have ample experience and the necessary skill are promoted to fill in the gap. Many multinational corporations have this policy of having what is called a hot list of promising candidates in advance. For example, HLL or Procter and Gamble and Godrej, etc., all follow such practices. Further, a person targeted to fill the anticipated vacancy from within may be encouraged to take relevant university courses, attend seminars for skill building, shadow the current incumbent to learn the ropes, receive coaching and mentoring from the incumbents, participate in job rotation and other development activities. While it seems that succession planning and development planning apply only to internal staff, by preparing the existing employees to move up, it can be used to hire a new employee as well, who may be hired before the incumbent leaves. This is being prepared for the full position while the incumbent is still in place. The purpose over here is to ensure continuity of the operation. As we are aware, human resource planning is quite complex, and of course, needless to say, it is also at the core of human resource management. So, within human resource planning, what is the role or significance of training and development? Where does training and staff development fit into the total bill of human resource plan? When companies have well thought out and useful human resource plans, it allows them to move training and staff development from a hit or miss process to one that is also strategic, organized, and designed to contribute to the company's bottom line. So, therefore, it should be very clear that this part of human resource planning is extremely important for the success of the organization, for meeting the objectives of the organization both in the short run as well as the long run. Much that passes from for training in corporations yields to value to all the company, to the entire company, because training and development of staff is not unconnected to the business needs, whether at present or in future. Hence, employees should go for training, they should go for various methods of training such as seminars and so on, and it would help that the employees have sound and good training, and the training should be useful. While it may sound to develop and train the employees as an end in itself, but it also makes sense to choose the kind of training that will result in employees being better contributors now and also better contributors in the future. So, therefore, training and development, staff development is deeply intertwined with the entire planning process, particularly the human resource planning process. A sound human resource plan will anticipate the skills that will be needed in the future, identify the gaps in the skills that are present and will be needed, and then plan for the development of staff in advance so that these skills will be available when required. When training and staff development are linked to identified present and future needs via human resource planning, it also allows for the use of multiple kinds of development activities and not just the reliance on training for skill development. This is because when the skills needed are anticipated early enough, the longer term learning and the development activities can be used to prepare the human resource. For example, job sharing and job rotation will fit when there is enough of time. So, in this way, we can see that training and development, skill development, and so on are related with the company's performance objectives, both the short term and long term objectives, and it is an integral part of human resource planning. Now we shall recapitulate what we have learned so far in this module. Human resource planning can be such a big endeavor with planning for all kinds of things like quality staff, retention, layoffs, training and development, compensation, etc. It is hard to provide for hints or tips in anything less than a book sized manual. However, if we take a view from the top, the perspective from above, there seems to be something that applies to most of the human resource planning functions, and these are important in making the process effective or even to make a part of the creating a of it, creating a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Human resource planning is a process that identifies current and future human resource needs for an organization to achieve its goals. Human resource planning should serve as a link between resource management and the overall strategic plan of an organization. First of all, human resource planning needs to be linked to the larger business planning or the overall strategic planning process. HR planning is not an end in itself, and neither is HR management an end in itself. The function is meant to support and enable the company to attain its business goals so that it needs to be linked to and driven by those business or strategic goals. This is called vertical integration. Secondly, as related, it is important that when HR planning is led by the HR department, it must be remembered that the whole process is to serve the stakeholders and the customers of human resource department. This means that the planning process must actively involve those stakeholders and customers such as the managers, executives, and even the line employees. Thirdly, human resource planning can't be effective without an understanding of the company or organization, its managers and employees, its mission and issues, and the environment in which it works. The Public Service Human Resource Agency of Canada puts it in this way. Good human resource planning entails understanding the demographics, the numbers. That is, you should be knowing the data, the profiles, the projections, and so on. And fourthly, as with any planning endeavor, the outcomes of the implementation of a human resource plan should be measurable and accessible. With many personnel functions, there are good or already available good metrics such as employee turnover or churn frequency of grievances and so on. But it is also good to try to assess the effects of implementation of a human resource plan on the achievement of the organization's business goals.